You see different permutations of that structure across different disciplines. But this is the structure within which we'll be working because it is the most common one. We, as you may be able to see, we spend a lot of time, like 3 weeks, I think at least, focusing on that first introduction section. Do you know why? Well, you know the saying, right? The first impression is the one that counts and all that jazz, right? So if my first impression of someone is, oh man, this guy has bad breath, well, the next time I see that person, I'll be, oh yeah, that's Fred, or I can't remember his name, the guy with the bad breath. It's the impression that was left of Fred, poor Fred. So you don't want to be Fred when you write your article. You want to have a good impression, because that first good impression, in this case we're talking about leaving a good impression with the reviewer of your article, can really take you a long way. Conversely, if you start off bad, and when I say start off bad, as we're going to talk about in this class, we're talking the title of your article that might be too long or too confusing or too vague, the abstract, which might also be confusing, and then the introduction, which doesn't highlight what you want to highlight or gets to the point of your contribution of the research, that can frustrate a reviewer. And so that first part we do focus on a lot. Then we do spend a couple of weeks towards the end talking about the discussion and the conclusion section, because at least if you start off well, you do want to end well as well. And a lot of people don't really know what should go into a discussion section exactly. Too often you see people just simply recapitulating what they said at the beginning, or restating the results, or overstating the importance of their results. And then we will have a special guest speaker in this class. Every year I try to do this, or I've tried to do this every year. The first year we had a round table of seven editors of journals, academic journals, most of them here from Brazil, but also a couple of international ones. Each of those editors, they told the story of behind the scenes of the publication process. What was cool about that event, that was in 2017, was that even though we had not sort of discussed ahead of time what they should talk about, each one of those editors basically, as you say in Portuguese, bateu na mesma tecla. They all talked about the same themes, many of which had to do with, please don't send us an article that is not fit for our journal. Please make it clear what is new or interesting about your article. So this was videoed and is on, as I'll show you in a minute, this is on our class website. If you're interested in getting go ahead and put some popcorn in the microwave. It's like 2 hours long. Stranger Things or, this video, well, put some investment in after the season ends, and you'll find that this is actually worth your time to listen to what they have to say. It's all done in Portuguese. And then last year, we had a guest speaker come in, this is also online, who talked about the dangers of predatory journals and how you have to be careful about when someone sends you an offer in your email that sounds too good to be true to publish something. And that is also worth watching. It was a very, very useful, I think, talk to hear. And this year, I'm excited about the topic that was chosen for this year, which is we're going to have people come in who are have expertise about scientific dissemination of scientific research beyond the scientific article, beyond the research article. How can you promote your research through other means beyond the journal, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, and so on. But one of the most important things is building as you'll hear this semester, is building a good personal profile that is easily accessible by journalists, for example, so that you can respond quickly and succinctly to requests for information about studies that you are developing. And so that's going to be a really good one towards the end of this semester. And then finally, the last day, we talk about plagiarism, and then the submission process, specifically how to deal with editors who sometimes can be very critical, and then ultimately how to take rejection, what rejection means, and that kind of thing. All right, in terms of the assessment of this course, you basically have three components. The first one is what's called Go Formative, which many of you have already accessed. Since there are 800 people enrolled in this class, and we only have, I think, 300 assignments that have been completed on Go Formative, some of you didn't do your homework. That's okay. It's the beginning of the semester. We are very forgiving at this stage. But please, ASAP, go there and do that. So you should register on Go Formative, and if you're confused about what that means, there's information on the site and from the slides from last week about that. The second main assessed portion of this class is to do with the introduction. As I mentioned, we focus a lot on the introduction section, and this piece is maybe the piece of writing that you're going to have the most feedback on. This is the stage where we hope that we can help you steer the ship in the right direction in your writing journey, or whatever mixed metaphor I'm trying to say. So this particular assignment, the introduction section, can take up to 2 months to receive feedback on, because we do take a lot of care in giving you feedback on that writing. And then the final one is actually a full article, and when I say an article, I mean a first draft of an article. So what we want to see here is that you can not only put an introduction together, but also have a vision, show us that you have a vision of what a full article, what kind of shape it should take. And we'll talk more about that more specifically as we get closer to that assessed portion of the course. Of course, participation is also important for this class. And then you see that to pass the course, you need to have a minimum of 70% on the final assessment and not have received less than 50 on any of the assessed portions of the course. Okay. Now, the website that I will post my slides and that I will post the videos, as well as in addition to what you already have in SIGA, I centralize a lot of stuff on this website here, which is drronmartinez.com. And when you go to that website, you can go there now if you like, there is an option on the menu, which is classes. And if you click on classes, you'll see a few of the classes that I have open right now. The main one that you should look at is the first one there, which is this class, PRPPG 7000, Escrita Acadêmica Inglês 2019. So that's this version of the class for this year. When you get there, this is what you'll see. You'll see that there's an email address for dúvidas, and there is a frequently asked questions. So this frequently asked questions is really important that you look at that, because the teaching assistants for this class have taken a lot of time to look at what questions have come up most frequently through email and so on. And we've been able to come up with a pretty good list. So when you click on this here, before you send your question, have a look at this frequently asked questions section to see if your question hasn't already been addressed there. Broadly speaking, if you have a question for bureaucratic stuff, like, I don't like the auditorium because it smells bad. I want to go to the remote version of the class, or vice versa. I feel lonely as a remote student. I want to go to the auditorium. Or I'm having problems getting on SIGA, or my matricula is having problems. Please address that question to this email here, the Transversal. If it's something about the content of the class, or something to do specifically about an assignment for this class, for example, my dog has the flu, and I won't be able to turn in my assignment by tomorrow, is that okay? Just let us know, and that way it's registered, and it's not, we don't have to say, okay, well, this person missed the assignment. So questions about class content, things related directly to this class, you have this email here. A few questions that have come up, and I'll address now. First of all, will it be necessary to write a full article until the end of the semester? Yes. The answer to that question is yes. But as I mentioned before, that doesn't mean that it has to be a final draft of an article. It's about, can you show us that you can demonstrate a knowledge or an awareness of what a full article should look like, broadly speaking? Introduction, method, results, and a discussion, and so on. If you can show us that, or sections within the particular discipline in which you're writing that you and your advisor see as appropriate, that's fine. The final work must be completed by the student's advisor, but some students have no advisor. What to do? In these cases, you should talk to us personally about this by email, or even better, as I'll show you in a little bit, try to schedule an appointment with us personally to discuss your options in those cases. And then finally, this is a question that has been asked before. Is it possible to publish translations in English of papers that have been already published in Portuguese? You know what that's called? Self-plagiarism. That's self-plagiarism. No, you can't do that. You have to show us that, because if you just do that, then it doesn't show evidence that you have learned anything. You've just simply translated something you did before. So it should be something original, or some kind of adaptation of that. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, you can talk to us personally, and right now we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 people who are specifically trained to deal with issues in this class. And to do that, to set a schedule, to schedule an appointment with us to talk about your writing, you just click on this button here on the website, and you choose one of the people there, and then you choose the time that is most convenient for you. So for here you have an example of João, who's available on Mondays, and other people will be available on other days. By the way, you have here some of the teaching assistants here who I have total faith in. So you have Laura. Hey, Laura. Milena. Juliana. Carolina. And Edimara. Yeah. These are the ones we have right now here who you'll be hearing a lot from them throughout the semester. And I thank you guys in advance for your patience and your support. And they're going to be very busy. As I mentioned before, this is the page that you'll see when you access that link. And the content that you'll see on this page will always have the slides from that particular class, from last week and today. The slides are already there. So if you need to see those again, you can go to that site. There's no excuse to say, oh, I missed the homework. No, it's always there on the site. I didn't know. No, it's there on the site. Unless the satellite blew up and there's no internet, there's no excuse. And then you also have the video that was filmed of that class. So last week's class has already been posted, and it's there. If you need to re-watch. Now, one of the reasons that I think that's good is not only so that you have a reference in case you missed something, but also some people, their English, they may not feel as confident about their English, and they want to hear it again, and so it's there for you as well. In addition, every class is going to have a class summary, both a version in English and a version in Portuguese. So whatever is given here, whatever is delivered here in this class, there'll be a summary of that. If you want to do it, you can read it in English or also in Portuguese. And if you're curious and you want to see where we're going with this course, you can also look at last year's version of the course. So if you want to get a sneak preview, of course it'll be slightly different this year, but if you want to get a sneak preview of what the following weeks look like, you can visit last year's site as well. All right, so with no further ado, today I want to look at some of your responses on the GoFormative website, and I want to talk about some of the common English language issues and how to address them later. But first, let's look at you for a bit, just a quick second to get a snapshot of what this class looks like. Now, in 2018, this is what the class looked like. So you had most people in this, both in the auditorium and remotely, were from the health sector. And I think second place was Setor de Tecnologia, the technology, the engineering schools. And then this year, the same thing. You have most people here are from the health sciences sector and then also engineering section. And I don't really know what that means exactly. Part of me thinks, well, you know, it could be, you know, you're all researchers. You think about the research question here, why that might be. Part of it might be is that maybe these sectors, one hypothesis could be that maybe these sectors, they feel more pressure to publish than others, perhaps. But then there are other variables as well in terms of maybe the other people, they already have good English, who knows? But I think it could have something to do with the former. Another interesting thing that is asked on the questionnaire that you have, and this is still being responded to now, in 2016, I asked, this is the first, 2017, that's a mistake. In 2017, I asked, what language do you intend to write your thesis or dissertation in? And at that stage, 19% of the people said English. Then last year, that went up to 22%, and then this year is 26%. And again, I'm not sure exactly why that is or what that means. It could just be a blip in the data, but it's certainly not going down. So that's an interesting finding. So in the homework, I asked you to complete a number of tasks, which you did, and one of the things I asked you to do was to visit the base. Remember we talked about Helen Sword and her idea of the good writer has behavioral and artisanal, which a lot of people haven't thought about before, artisanal habits, social habits, and emotional ones. And then you go to this website, and then they have this sort of this diagram, and you can diagnose yourself. And so I asked you to post what your configuration is, and I was able to visualize, you know, what sort of writing profiles do people have. And do you know which ones were the most common? That everybody's aspiration is to be the rock, because the rock means that you're balanced and strong on all sides. And there were a lot of people who were rocks. But actually, the number 3 most common profile so far, there's people still doing this, was the seabird. The seabird indicates that you've given yourself high ratings for your artisanal and the social, the emotional, but you struggle to write as productively. So these are people who feel like they could be more productive in their writing. So that was the number 3 most common one. People who thought, okay, I'm pretty strong in the other, but I need to be more productive in the B section. The second most common one was the lone wolf. So this is kind of the opposite, where this is somebody who sits down and writes a lot, but doesn't like to share their writing very much. Maybe feels that they're pretty confident in terms of their writing is pretty good. They feel like they feel like they like their writing, but they're not really sociable about it. And then the most common one was the wing. So these are people who do write in groups, or they often talk about their writing and the things they want to publish with their advisors or their colleagues or their classmates and so on. But they don't like their writing very much. They don't think they're very good at it. They don't feel, in fact, they don't really like writing very much, or they say they don't really like writing very much, and therefore they don't really feel very comfortable sitting down and doing the task of writing very often. And this so far is the most common profile of this group here, both in the auditorium and remotely. Now, I find that to be consistent with other findings and elsewhere. So that's interesting. I also ask you to talk to your advisors about the first article that your advisor published. And there were some interesting things here. I'll let you read this one here. And this is somebody who clearly has been through the process. Anybody here, or anybody you know who's been through the process will say the same thing. It can be a tiring thing. And what research shows is that if you have never been through the process, it's even worse. Because it's like that thing, you know, like if you send a text to somebody and it's an important text. Imagine you send a WhatsApp message to somebody. Something like, somebody you really like. You know, somebody who you really want to, you know, impress or something. Say, hey, would you like to go out with me for coffee? And you're waiting for the answer. And then you start looking at your phone. Have they replied yet? Oh, have those two little blue check marks appeared on the thing that show that the person has read it yet? And why hasn't the person responding? And that's what it's like when you send an article for the first time to, or for a few times, to a journal. And the more you have invested in it, the worse it is. So if you spend 4 years on your research, that's your baby, and you spend a lot of time on the article, and you send it to the journal, you just can't wait for the journal to get back to you. And so it is a tiring, stressful process. And it does seem like the revisores nunca estão satisfeitos com seu artigo. It can be very frustrating. And it's hard, especially for people who are kind of new at the process, to not take these critiques personally. Like, what do you mean? Research is perfect. No, it's hard to do that. This is related to another comment that, these are just some examples. All the comments were very interesting. This one here, you can read that too. So my own interpretation of this comment is that if you're focusing a lot on, as many of you are now, if you're focusing a lot on your research, the method and the results, it can be hard to think about the whole story, the bigger picture. Are you selling your story in the right way? Are you telling your story in the right way? Are you able to show the contribution in a way that's clear? And so I think that was an interesting, insightful comment. And then finally, there's this comment here. I like this comment because the person seems to acknowledge the fact that, first of all, you have to have an article that's well written. That should be obvious, but you have to have an article that's well written. And then after that, make sure the English is good. But okay, that last little bit, English is good, can be a challenge for a lot of people. And so we're going to talk about that today. An article, what they mention here about the metodologia, resultados, discussão, they follow this kind of IMRAD structure, a lot of research articles. The majority of them, in fact. Introduction, method, result, and discussion, IMRAD. Most of you have seen this 1,000 times already, and you maybe haven't thought of it this way, but that's how it is. But maybe a lot of people here haven't stop to think about how they relate to each other and the shape that an article takes. So as I mentioned, for the final paper, what we want to see is that you can show us that you can make an article have a proper shape of a research article. This is kind of what we mean. First of all, that it has these sections that are discernible and distinguishable, but also this kind of hourglass shape where you kind of start more broadly, what's called the territory, the research territory, and then kind of funnel it down to your more narrow focus, and then go back open again, talking about how your research fits into that broad territory that you talked about at the beginning. Of course, we're going to talk about this again throughout this course. So that's one part of the shape that article should take, the story that you're telling should take. The other thing is that there should be a connection, of course, that your introduction section should not be dissociated from your method section and so on. There should be a kind of cohesion and coherence through those sections. What happens is, often, is that if you spend 4 years working on your thesis, for example, and then you have these sections kind of divided into chapters practically. And so you spend a lot of time working on your literature review or embasamento teórico, and that's like one chapter. And then you have another chapter, which is, your method section, and so on. And so what a lot of people do, and we'll mention this again in this course, is that they try to do a Control-C, Control-V of those and try to squeeze it into an article when there is not a natural connection between those in the thesis. And so what a lot of people don't realize is you have to kind of what's called re-genre. You have to take that and somehow rethink for an article, often and recommendably, for the journal that you intend to submit the article. And so this is the structure that kind of shapes not only a research article and what we hope to see in your final paper, but kind of shapes this course as a whole. So as I alluded to, you should think of not only your article telling about your research, but you're kind of telling a story. You're basically, that's what a research report, a research article does. It kind of tells a research story. And so in this class, we want to help you learn how to tell that story in a way that captivates your intended audience. For you to think about this intended audience, who your readers are, and how if you are affecting the intended impact. For you to have, eventually, we all hope that by the end of this course you have greater confidence after you finish this class, and that you have the tools to help yourselves as well. And so we're going to be working on that toolbox here today, specifically to English. So first of all, a couple of questions that you should be asking yourselves right now. Which are the most common surface errors in English research article writing? Now, I say surface errors because you remember that pyramid that I presented last week? In the pyramid, we had language as the pointy part, then we had writing, and then we had the research itself. The research, of course, is the sine qua non of the research article. If you do not have a good research base, then forget about the rest. But at the tippy top of that pyramid, that pointy part, is the language part. And even though that is not really the most important part of the pyramid in terms of the weight of causing failure or success, it is something that can leave an impression. And those surface errors, things like grammar and vocabulary, they can make a difference, and we want to get that off the table. The rest of the course after today, we'll be talking more about the second layer, the layer of language, of writing itself. How to organize your idea, logic, and so on. Make yourself clear. But the surface areas, we'll look at what are the most common ones, and what electronic tools can help you. So today we're roughly speaking, we're going to divide the class into two sections. First of all, talking about problems that you can identify and fix for yourselves. So we're talking about grammar problems that you should already, by the end of this class, be aware of these typical problems, and when you see them in your writing, say, I better check this first. And then another type of grammatical problem, which is more subtle and therefore electronic tools can complement your analysis, help you detect. In either case, I think it's good to make these electronic tools your friends. As I say, let the robots do the work. I have one of these, vacuum cleaners at home. It's great to have this here. Of course, they don't do all the work for you. You have to. Even though I try to let the machine do all the work. You ever seen these things before? They just kind of go and they vacuum the room for you, and they're not very accurate, but they can do a good basic job. But the heavy stuff, dusting on top of a piece of furniture and lifting up the carpet or whatever, things I never do. Those types of things, require. But it's nice to make electronic things your friend. So let's test you to see how good you already are right now in your English grammar knowledge, both people here in the auditorium and people who are online. You're gonna access a site called Kahoot. When you get to Kahoot, can you display the other slide here? Wait, can you go back to the slide? This one here, yeah. When you go here to kahoot.it, you're gonna have a game pin. And so you're gonna see that in a minute. Then you'll insert your game pin, and then you'll hit enter. When you hit enter, it'll ask you for a name. Now, I'll say already, right away, you can choose any name you want, and I won't know who it is. Now, in previous years, this has been kind of dangerous, where people have written, Ele não, fora Temer. That's okay. If you want to do political propaganda, I understand, but try not. At least try to keep it clean. Imagine there might be children watching. All right. So now you can play. Do classic. So wait until we have like a few hundred players, and then there's an Ellie now. See? Last year? Oh man, there's a lot. A lot. And there's a slight delay between this and the remote viewers, so we have to allow a minute. Yeah, good idea. Let's wait a little while, yeah, because there's a slight delay between what they see here and what they see at home, and so they need a few seconds to catch up. When I say at home, wherever they're watching. Baby shark, I like that. Oh, we have a hacker. Okay. I think. Oi? Okay. So I think, we have over 200 now. I think we can do it. All right. Do you want to hit start? Are you ready? First question. Which one is correct? Counting down. Supplementation of vitamin supplementation. Zero. All right. Good. So most people chose the correct answer. And I'm going to explain to you why the red one is wrong in a little while. Okay. Let's do the next one. Elisa is winning so far. All right, 28, 27, 26. Which one is correct? Occurrence of failure or failure occurrence? Okay, ding, ding, ding. Yep, most people got this one. Actually, most people got this one wrong. And we'll explain why, or the nuances of this in a little while. Okay, go ahead. So now Thais is ahead. Which one is correct? Demographic data were analyzed demographic data, or data analyzed demographic were. Okay, good. Most people got that one right. Okay, Gabi, number 4. This type of analysis made difficult the identification, or this type of analysis made identification difficult? Okay, let's see. All right, most people got that one right. Number 5, which one is correct? The procedure does not significantly affect the data, or the procedure does not affect significantly the data. Okay. Ooh. That one was harder. Okay, the correct one was the first one. The procedure does not significantly affect the data. All right, last one. Which is the correct translation for a droga causou aumento nos níveis de sódio? Whoa, okay. So yeah, I mean, there's not one that really stands out there. In fact, if you ran an ANOVA, you might not find any significance among any of those. But the one that is correct is the first one. The drug caused an increase in. All right. So now that you hate English, can we go back to the slides? Thank you. All of these exercises that you've just done to help, or serve two purposes for this class. One is to make you aware of typical problems that recur in as surface errors in academic articles. And when I say the most typical ones, a fellow researcher and myself have done an analysis of several research articles written by Brazilians to identify these typical errors. And these are the ones that, not only are they the most typical ones, but the ones that kind of can maybe cause the most sort of irritation by a reader, especially somebody who has a very high proficiency in English. So the second reason that I wanted you to do this exercise is because this basically those are the points that we'll be working on for today's class. So the first one, this is about suplementação de vitaminas, and then the incorrect being supplementation of vitamin, and the correct one is vitamin supplementation. Some of you might think, well, come on. I mean, the reader who's reading this, they'll understand, right? Well, possibly, yes, they'll understand supplementation of vitamin. But the thing is, there are a couple of thoughts I have about that. First of all, when a reader reads supplementation of vitamin, even if no problem, and there are other examples which would not be so easy, even if they do understand it, at the very least, somebody who feels confident about their English, they're going to, first of all, be distracted by that mistake. And that distraction can be like, you never talk to somebody, they have like some spinach in their teeth or something, and you can't stop looking at that spinach that's stuck in their teeth, and then you're not listening to what they're saying anymore, you're looking at that piece of green thing that's stuck in their teeth. You don't want that green thing stuck on your piece of paper there. You don't want the reader to be looking at your mistake and not what you're saying, not looking at how you're saying it, instead of looking at how you're saying it, reading about what you're saying. The other thing is that it can detract from the overall impression of the competence of not only your writing, but how much care you put into the actual submission of an article. So we're going to talk about in a second about why that is wrong, and also something like ocorrência de falha, why that is not failure occurrence, but more typically occurrence of failure. So essentially it comes down to this, and this is very, very, very general. You could say that vitamin supplementation is, at the end of the day, is a type of supplementation. So you're putting the vitamin there ahead of supplementation as what's called a pre-modifier. You have vitamin kind of acting as an adjective, just like the way you would say green grass. Vitamin supplementation, green describes the grass. Vitamin describes that supplementation. It's pre-modifying the noun there, vitamin supplementation. So it's a kind of supplementation, therefore it makes sense to have vitamin ahead of supplementation. The difference is that with the other one, is ocorrência de falha is not failure occurrence, because it's not a type of occurrence. So to help you remember, and nota bene, this is not a rule, this is a way to help you remember, is that look at these, consider these terms here. Washing machine is a kind of machine, type of machine. A bedroom is a type of room. A bookstore is a type of store. A flash mob is a kind of mob. Email, electronic mail, is a kind of mail. Game is a kind of show. Game describing show, type of show. So how do you say the name of this guy in Portuguese? Yeah, Homem-Aranha. So it's not man-spider or man of spider, but of course, Spider-Man. How would you say this in English? Yeah, it's not cake of carrot, but it's a kind of cake. So you would say carrot cake. That's correct. How would you say a piece of, then you have a piece of carrot cake, not a carrot cake piece. It's not a kind of piece. It's a piece of carrot cake. So that is a way to help you remember. Now let's play a little game. Look at real world applications of this, not Spider-Man and carrot cake. So here's a game show moment. here is a real abstract in Portuguese. There's a resumo. Now that you're aware of this danger that I've just shown you that can cause problems with of or to not say of, where is the potential danger here in this abstract? You don't have to say it if you don't want, just think about it. Read it, and where is the potential danger? So if this was your abstract, you should have paid attention to this here, this pesquisa exploratória de campo. That's a complex noun phrase that in English might be different. And another one here, and this is kind of funny, usuários de álcool y otras drogas. So that would be another complex noun phrase that you'd have to look out for, these two here. Okay, so now that you would be aware of this would be an example of something you should set off a red flag for you. Then the other part of this game is, how would you fix it? Well, here is the actual translation. So this is the real translation of that resumo. So, realizou-se uma pesquisa exploratória de campo. You have here an explorative research of field. What do you think about that? No, based on what I mentioned earlier, that would be problematic. And here's another, how the other part was translated. And this is particularly strange, I think, because you could interpret this to mean that the alcohol users are drugs. Alcohol users and other drugs. So that is also, but you can see how the mix-up can happen. So how would you fix that? Well, I want to take a moment to talk about something that you probably have never thought of before to use to check what the correct one is. Now, you already know how to identify problems. I mean, you know I've already begun to hopefully raise your awareness about, okay, be careful with these types of construction. But have you ever seen this before? Now, sorry, just a minute before I continue.
Yes, I saw it. This type of tool.
Yeah, I'm used to getting laughs here, but we'll talk about this more in a second. Go ahead.
Yes. Excuse me, the tendency is at Moodle, so you can go there and choose the right word. It's there. Ok? Para o pessoal do remoto, tá? A palavra-chave está aparecendo no vídeo para vocês e também está aparecendo no chat, tá bom? Muito obrigada. Thank you.
Should I give them a minute, or can I? Okay. So yes, of course, you know this Google Translate, and usually when I show this, people laugh right away because you're used to seeing goofy things, silly things happen in Google Translate. Like this one, for example. Or this one. But if you went to Google Translate and you put in queijo Minas, right now you could test it if you like, you're probably going to get this. So sometimes Google works. Sometimes Google Translate actually comes up with a translation that is acceptable. So I want to talk a little bit about how and why that might happen, and how it could help you, and what you have to look out for, and how you can use it as a possible aid in being detectives to try to find what the correct form is, again, since you are aware that something might be problematic, then you can use these tools to check to see if you have it right or not. So, queijo Minas cheese, they didn't say cheese mine, even though one translation of a mina is a mine. Google's a little smarter than that. And it keeps getting a little bit better because of machine learning algorithms. So in the case of this version of Google Translate, it uses something called statistical machine translation. And other versions of Google Translate uses what they call neural machine translation. But basically, with the former, with statistical machine translation, it uses massive amounts of data to be able to learn better and produce better translations. So probably a decade ago, it was horrible at translations, might be getting a little bit better now. Part of the reason it's getting better is because writing, research article writing and technical writing is different from, say, poetry or music lyrics. Google Translate is still absolutely awful if you try to if you copy and paste a Beatles song and put it in Google Translate. It'll, she loves you, yeah, 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 will look like, something really ridiculous. I would twist and shout. Can you imagine what that would be in Portuguese? It's a disaster. But what's different between, poetry and song lyrics compared to technical writing and research article writing is that research article writing is actually, in terms of semantically speaking and the creativity involved, is not really that creative. It's actually quite formulaic. Kind of follows, people tend to write the same things all the time in different configurations. But having said that, you still get things like this. Which is not good. But if you changed it a little bit and you added some more data, you would get something better. Now, since all of you are researchers and you know how valuable data is, you could add some more data to double check. Is Google right or not? So another translator that I recommend, which a lot of you have not heard about before, is something called DeepL. DeepL Translator is the competition, basically. It's a free competitor for Google Translate as well, and they are also pretty good. So when you access that site, DeepL, you can translate from Portuguese into English, vice versa. It has not all languages, but it has, I think, 5 or 6 different languages you can do. And if you put in pão com frios, you get the same problem. You get cold bread. And then even worse, you have alternatives. Chilled bread, iced bread. But if you add a little bit more data, contextualization, then it gets better. And actually, I like this translation even better than cold meats, which for me, a more natural way of saying that is cold cuts. Both are good. I like this one even better. No café de manhã havia pão com frio, at first there was bread and cold cuts. That is a very good translation. But you see that adding more data helped the machine and produce better results. So the reason I'm saying all of this is that once you are aware of a typical grammatical mistake, then that should raise a red flag, and you can check to see, okay, am I writing this correct? Because this noun phrase configuration here can be tricky. Let's check against a couple of translation sources and see what they give me. And you can trust them depending on how much data you give them. So supplementação de vitaminas, you see that it would never give you supplementation of vitamin. It would give you vitamin supplementation. When you give enough context about concorrência de falha, you get occurrence of failure, not failure occurrence. And with uma pesquisa exploratória de campo, you don't get what you saw earlier, you get an exploratory field survey. Or, if you want to compare that, again, I recommend this with another good translator like DeepL, you can see that you have alternatives here, and good ones. an exploratory field of research, an exploratory field of study. My favorite one was this one right here, an exploratory field study. That's my own personal preference, although all three would be fine. If you want to, that could lead you to the path of checking, okay, between these three alternatives that I have now, between Google Translate and DeepL, let's see which one is the most common according to Google Scholar, Google Acadêmica, for example. Do a little bit more detective work to refine your choices. So, getting back to that abstract that we saw earlier, it was made an explorative field, research of field. Then you could easily correct that to an exploratory field survey or exploratory field study if you use electronic tools. And then with usuários de álcool e outras drogas, you wouldn't get what we saw earlier, but you'd see users of alcohol and other drugs. So that's one way you can use electronic tools or Google Translate to help you. And an example of how this can make a difference, at CAPA, the writing center that I run, we received this as a title in an article, production of membranes of poly. And because I'm aware, and as you will be now, that this it could be problematic, this sets off a red light in my head. Say, okay, I better check this because this doesn't sound right to me. And after doing some checking, then we changed that to polymembranes, which was the more common version. But to get to that point, it took some detective work, including going through Google Scholar, looking different configurations, looking for these keywords, checking the sources of those links. Which journals were they written in? Was it a journal only? Did it only appear in Temple, or did it appear in other journals as well? And we eventually came up with, okay, this is the term that most researchers around the world seem to use. So it takes a little bit of detective work. The next thing that you saw in the Kahoot game that we played was passive construction. So you have to be careful with these two. This foram analisados, this fronting of passivization. Foram analisados dados demográficos doesn't sound right in English. So this were analyzed demographic data can be very distracting to a reader. The correct form, the correct one, meaning the one that sounds better, is demographic data were analyzed. So you have to think, okay, object plus verb. You have to be careful with this Yoda speak. So if you look at this abstract that we saw, the same one, can you find where this passivization could be a problematic? Well, it's clear right at the beginning. And this is a very common construction. You probably use it all the time in your writing. If you're a Portuguese speaker, you use this all the time. It's not so much, it's not the same in Spanish, it's not exactly the same in French, for example, but it's very common, especially in Portuguese. Well, when the person who wrote this article translated this abstract into English, they naturally did something which is very common, a common mistake, which is this. And if you put this in Word, it might not even indicate that there's a problem here. But this whole, now you can see that this whole sentence becomes problematic. And this whole sentence now can be a distraction to the reader. And you can imagine the kind of impression one might risk causing. So if you put all of that together, the whole sentence, you can see that actually the correct syntax is put in place, and also the right word choices are made when using this. And similarly that happens also in DeepL. And so it identifies the correct translation, and it fixes the problem. This, again, you wouldn't do for all your sentences, but if you were wanting to check something and think, okay, I'm not sure, I remember that Ron mentioned something about passive voice, I better check this, and it would either give you the correct answer. The other issue that was dealt with in the Kahoot quiz was this construction with verbs and then adverbs following the verbs and adjectives. So, este tipo de análise dificultou a identificação. Very common for Brazilians to write. This type of analysis made difficult the identification. And again, this kind of confuses the reader sometimes. The correct version being this type of analysis made identification. Then finally, at the end, the adjective difficult. Similarly, geralmente, o procedimento não afeta significativamente os dados. Generally, the procedure does not affect significantly the data is incorrect. The correct one is the procedure does not significantly affect the data. So, if you put this in a Google Translate, you would see that the word difficult, the adjective would be put at the end. The same thing here. Now, prepositions, everybody seems to hate prepositions. And I hate them myself for Portuguese. I never know if it's consiste de, consiste em, estamos em quatro pessoas. Everything's really good. Vou sentar na mesa. It doesn't make any sense to me. You know, eu fui no restaurante, fui ao restaurante. It's all very, very confusing. At the end of the day, you understand me because you know we're conversing. But in an article, I'd want to be more careful, and so I always ask my wife, who's a native speaker of Portuguese, to check it and make sure that I've got all the prepositions correct. But in English, it can be very tricky, just like in Portuguese. So here you have a droga causou aumento significativo nos níveis de sódio. Em cada ponto foi monitorado o pH. Right? And of all of these, a lot of them would be plausible. Like, I think it could be this, it could be that. Of course, the correct one is in. Now, there can be all kinds of confusing, rather deep explanations about why this is the case. But the fact is, you have to check it. And this is not an easy task to do. It's more subtle. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can do that on your own. Another example, em cada ponto foi monitorado o pH, and then it could be in each point, on each point, and it's at each point. Okay. So how do you check that? Well, you could use again Google Scholar here to help you with rather Google Translate or DeepL to help you with that. But the problem is that when you have a whole article written, if you counted all the prepositions, they'd be in the hundreds. Similarly with articles, we'll talk about that too. So how do you look for that needle in a haystack? Which one's right, which one's wrong? Well, there is a site called Grammarly, which you can use for free. Grammarly is not good for a lot of things. So you don't want to rely on Grammarly for everything. For example, here is Grammarly suggesting that cruisy be corrected to crazy, which is not correct. But it is good for prepositions. So it is pretty good because of the data that it has. It is pretty good at noticing, okay, well, group in doesn't match our database as the most common preposition that goes after grouped. Don't you mean grouped into? And so it can be a good way of highlighting those needles in the haystack, all those prepositions that you may not want to go one by one to check. There are other sources, though. So, for example, is it result in? Is it result on? There's a website that I recommend called Skell. So if you Google Skell, it's part of a package of electronic tools called Sketch Engine. And when you get there, you should see something that looks like this. What Skell does is it draws on real examples, often academic examples, and produces a list of examples for you to see context, to see how this word is used in natural contexts. But in addition to that, verbs. And you have to be careful to make sure you have the right part of speech. In this case, I want to see the verb, so you have to switch to result as a verb. It can show you what typically goes around result. So in this case, you have subject of results, meaning what comes after result. You have resulted in damage, resulted in injury, resulted in loss. And you see that the most common preposition that follows result is in as a verb. You have the other side, as I mentioned, you have resulted in damage, resulted in injury, resulted in loss, resulted in death. But you also have the explosion resulted in, the battle resulted in, and so on. And you can click on context to see more examples around those objects, or rather, this is the resulting explosion, resulting injuries, and so on. You can see more context, and if you click on this, you can see more real examples from that link. Another kind of needle in a haystack is articles that are missing. So our articles are and an and the. So here you have, a mistura foi preservada e usada como solvente para ajustar a concentração. And what you have here is a typical mistake. The mixture was preserved and used as solvent to adjust the concentration. And it's just a little tiny thing, but it can make a difference. That what the author means is used as a solvent. So again, Grammarly is pretty good at picking this up. When they see a word, in this case like dose, and they see certain, they say, okay, this doesn't match our database for what usually happens before certain dose. So I think there's like or the missing here, and then you could decide which one's correct. In addition, you can keep doing that detective work and go to Google Scholar and do the typical between quotation marks to see the exact phrase. Is that correct? And if you tried the definite article above the certain dose, you would see that there is not any match, so it must be a certain dose. Other things that Grammarly does well is look for problems with agreement. So here you have such results shows. Well, because this is plural, that's a mistake. And so it shows you, okay, there's an agreement problem here. Here you have probability of become. Typical problem, that whole gerund, do I put an ing ending? It's also very good at showing, no, this has to be an ing form here. So I do recommend Grammarly for those particular things. We've talked about so far electronic translator, talked about Grammarly, we do Google Scholar, but we haven't talked about a couple, to finish this class, two things that I would like you to use in this class, start using, and it'll be part of your homework for next week, which is something called a concordancer and a site called Write and Improve. Okay, so what would be the correct form? Mixed in or mixed with? What do you think? Well, the answer to that question, actually, there's not a correct answer there. In fact, it could depend a lot on the context, and even it could depend on the particular academic science or discipline that you're working in. And so for that reason, if all the sites that I've shown you so far, they have their own sort of databases that they work with. But these are very large general databases. To really kind of refine your toolbox, it's good to try to build your own database of your particular area. And your particular area, your particular field, your particular academic discipline will be very specific to your research. So even in your laboratories that you work in, that you may be working in, the person sitting next to you, even though they're in the same lab, may be working on a particular area, a particular object of study that is different from yours, and using a different body of literature than you are in the same lab. Even though the university is divided by sectors and departments, in every single sector, every single department, there are sub-areas. For example, I'm officially part of what's called the Departamento de Letras Estrangeiras Modernas. First of all, that's located on the 9th floor of Dom Pedro I building in the Reitoria campus. On the 10th floor is DELIN, Departamento de Linguística, or Línguas. That's DELIN. That's on the 10th floor, right? Yeah. But we don't talk to each other very much. It's, we both work with language, but the two groups don't talk. It's like, oh yeah, those people from DELIN, we don't like those. Yeah. And then in DELIN we have Italian, French, Japanese, English, all of it, and they each have their own interests. So for example, in English, DELIN Letras Inglês, there's the sub-area of literature, and there's a sub-area of linguística aplicada, and then within linguística aplicada, you have people who are interested in maybe translation studies, and people who are interested in teacher preparation, and within teacher preparation, you might have people who are interested in teaching younger students and teaching. Oh, it's crazy, and each of those people will have different bodies of literature that they're working with. So I won't be familiar with necessarily a lot of the literature the guy sitting next to me reads. And for that reason, it's a good idea to think of, okay, let me build my own database of information that is most directed to exactly what I'm writing. And to do that, there's a tool called Concordance, and there's a free version which is very good called AntConc. Let me just quickly demonstrate what this looks like. I'm sorry, I'm going to step off the stage for a minute. I'm going to have to use the computer.
Which computer do you want to
this one here. All right. So that you can see I'm not lying to you and this stuff really works, hopefully. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to type in AntConc. And yeah. Do I have the rights to install software on here? Yes. Yeah? Okay. So you're going to go to, is this Linux or is it Windows?
It's Windows.
Okay, so let's go to, is it 64? Well. That's all right. We'll find out. Whew, it worked. All right. All right. So it is this quick. It's a very light software package. It works very quickly, whether it be for Linux, for Windows, or for Mac. For Mac, you might have to open the exception for the permissions. And then what does this do? Well, let's say that your scientific area is food science. And so, you might be using food chemistry. I like food chemistry. I like food science because I like food. Yeah. And so you might be working with, a number of PDFs, and most of you have access to research articles in the form of PDF. Since 20 years ago, most of them are in PDF form. Now, you can therefore choose a particular area of research that's interesting to you and download as many free PDFs as you like. And then you're going to need to convert those into text form in order to be used in the software. And when you do that, it looks something like this. Let's see here. So here I have a corpus of non-native written in English articles on food science, and this is I converted all the PDFs into this pure TXT, pure text form. I'll show you how to do that yourselves. If you don't know how to do it, I'll tell you how to do that in a second. Okay, so when you've collected all the free PDFs for your particular area that you want, and you can, and I recommend, size matters for corpus linguistic stuff. Then you just go to File here, Open File, and then open wherever you put your corpus. So I'm going to just choose all, open them up. And then I can do a number of things. First of all, I can see, okay, what are the most common terms in this area? So I've clicked on word list here, and then I just click on Start. I have 193 PDFs here collected. And then you see this list here, and you think, okay, well, the first word in English is the. Big deal. How is that going to help me? But if you keep going down, you see that, oh, wait, there's this word food, and then, which makes sense, of course. And word temperature. And you might think, okay, well, that's interesting. Why is the word temperature so important here, or the word time? And if you're interested in why the word time is there so prominently figured, and you can click on it. And when you click on the word time, it produces this blue thing here is what's called the node word. And so this is called a quick concordance, a keyword in context concordance. And you can see, okay, so this is the way time is used in my particular academic discipline. And if you want more context, you can click on this, and it takes you right to the file to see how it was used in that particular context. You can also look at what are called collocates. To see what are the most common words that appear around time. And you can sort this by frequency. So you can see that, storage is a common word that appears next to time. And it's not responding right now. But it's, well, hopefully you'll have more memory on your computers. But that's the basic idea. You're going to have homework to do with this. Can I go back to the slides? Let me see. Yeah. So there is a tutorial. I've recorded a video so that you can do this at home in case you can't remember or you want to see it again. All these steps here I've just gone through. And I'd like you to at least generate a word list and look at the collocations. For example, word mixed shows, if I click in collocates, I put in the word mixed in food science, I can see that mixed with is the most common form, not mixed in. But a different area of science, say if you're dealing with material science, you might find that they're talking about some kind of substrate that was mixed in something. I don't know. But the point is, it's good if you have something specifically related to your particular academic discipline. If for some reason you are not yet attached to a library here, and you don't have access to the Portal de Periódicos da CAPES, if you don't know how to do it, you should find out how to do it if you are a part of UFPR, or if you're watching this from a state university, if for some reason you don't have access to this. There's another service called Unpaywall, which is kind of plug-in for your browser, which will point you in the direction of if a free version of an article exists to help you get there. Then, as I mentioned, to convert the PDFs of these articles to text, I recommend a website called PDF to Text. There are other ones, but the reason I like this particular one, PDF to Text, is that you can upload, I think it's up to 20 PDF articles at the same time, whereas other ones you have to do one at a time and it can take a long time. The last thing, as I mentioned, that I want to talk to you about is really quickly, a site called Write and Improve. You won't be able to receive feedback every day from us on your writing. You will get feedback, but if you want more feedback on your writing, there's a site called Write and Improve, which is not this one here, but down here, this Cambridge English Write and Improve. And if you go there, you can, as you see here, you can practice writing English, you can get your grade in seconds, you can look at feedback and keep improving, and it's free. And you might say to yourself, why do they do this for free? What's the hook? What's the catch? Well, the reason they do this, Cambridge, is that Cambridge Assessment is a very, very big testing company. And they make a lot of money from the tests that they give. IELTS, Cambridge Advanced English, Cambridge Proficiency English Exam. And they, obviously, one of the most expensive things for them is to pay, used to be, to pay people to give feedback on writing and to score writing. Well, these days, these companies, they try to do this more automatically. Now, if you look at a curve of English proficiency, you imagine that this side of the curve is really low, and this side of the curve is really high. What you see is that up here is the highest point where the most people are in the middle ground. Not too low, not too high. People who take Cambridge tests, they're in this middle area here. Those that deviate from the mean, they're providers of less data. So what happens currently at Cambridge Assessment is that if you take a test with Cambridge Assessment and it's not in that middle ground, which can be automatically scored, then it gets kicked out automatically to a human rater. And the human rater then decides if it's very low, what kind of feedback to give, what kind of score to give, or if it's very high, which it detects automatically, then also decides what the human rater decides what score should be, and this is matched with another human rater. So you get reliable data, human data, on the low end and the high end of the proficiency scale for writing, and then these data get fed back into the machine so that their scoring gets better and better. That's why this is free. But you get to benefit from this because you can write stuff, you can write many different tasks and get feedback on your writing at any time for free. And so what you choose, first you have to choose if you think that you are a beginner, intermediate, advanced. I think most people here would be at least, most people would not be here, they'd be in these two categories here. And then you simply have to, you register and you put your name in, and then you choose a task. You choose any of a task, a business report, for example, and then after you write your task, which should take you probably maximum of 20, 30 minutes to do, then you receive feedback and where you are on a common European framework of reference scale, A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. And you can even monitor your own progress through here. So just to, another way to get feedback, the theme of today has been, don't be afraid to let the machines help you. This is a way, I hope, that you, after this class, will gain more confidence, that you can help yourselves as well, have some autonomy, because obviously we're not going to be there for you every day. But at least during this course, you can contact us all the time. And so thank you again for the teacher aides who are here today. And this is your homework for next week. So first, your homework is, if you have not done your homework for today, please finish it. We are very forgiving for now, since the beginning of the semester, but we will be less tolerant as the semester goes on. You have a new task on formative, which is not open yet, but I'm going to open the next 5 minutes, which you'll be able to do. I'll also ask you to read 2 articles. One is Eliana Irano's Research Article Introductions, which is about the typical patterns of research article introductions that Brazilians make. and then an article called Especially in the Last Years, which also on their website, which you can download, which talks about whether or not common mistakes are tolerated by journal articles. And then finally, a really short kind of fun video called Subtext, which is also on the website. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alguém tem alguma dúvida? Não? So
I'm going to open the task now for them to do.
ok. Pessoal, eu vou dar o aviso. A câmera está me pegando? Subir? Por favor, então, certo? Mas, se você não tem o Firefox e está usando o Chrome, de tempos em tempos, quem está usando o Chrome precisa reiniciar o navegador. Tá? Recomendo o navegador, limpe a memória cache e, se necessário, você reiniciar o computador. Tá? Quem está assistindo a aula pelo celular é muito ineficiente. A gente realmente recomenda que vocês, do remoto, assistam a aula pelo... Tá? E conseguiu? Não? Tá. Slides. Não tá? Então, faz o seguinte, vai iniciar, certo? Documentos, a pasta EA Inglês, tá? E esse anúncio. Agora você coloca em visualizar. Certo? Pessoal, esses alunos vêm falar comigo delas, por favor, avise, tá? Mande uma mensagem para vir falar comigo. Não. Tá bom? Pessoal, é isso. Uma boa tarde, uma boa semana para vocês.